sex and politics. Where's the booze? I mean, somehow this program has to have something in it about sex, booze, and politics. Well, I'm a recovering politician, I want you to know. I'm in about the 50th step out of 100, and I'm working on it day by day by day. And I want to tell you what happens to you when you are a politician and you run for governor and you don't win. It's bad. I went home and my dog wouldn't even lick me. But let me tell you the worst thing about it. About a month after I'd lost the governorship, I was headed to my hometown of Boone. And I stopped at this little country store, and this woman in there behind the counter looked at me funny like, and she said, "Are you who I think you are?" That's dangerous. I said, "Well, who do you think I am?" And she says, "Ain't you Rufus?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "Hell, I thought you were dead." Look, I'm glad to be invited to go anywhere because all my friends, especially my redneck friends, so what are you doing down there with that bunch of people at something called TEDx? You need to be out gardening and working on the farm. But I am very delighted to be here. And I want to tell you a few things that happened along the way with somebody that's been full throttle all of his life. Let me tell you about something that happened. 44 years ago, 1972, on a hot, humid day in Washington, D.C., I made a short trip in the back of a police car, headed down to the White House. And as Sarah said, I was headed on a mission to do something that nobody had ever done before, to deliver a subpoena on a sitting president named Richard Nixon, who had broken every law that you can think of on the books. And believe you me, we see a lot of similarities today. And I know I'm not getting into politics, but no way. But that was a memorable trip for me. It was a defining point in my life because here is a 31-year-old boy that grew up on a farm in Boone, North Carolina, delivering a subpoena on a president. And a subpoena is a heavy-duty piece of paper. It commands you to turn over all the books and records. And these were for the tapes. And as you recall, if you weren't around, and most of you weren't, and you studied your history, though I know that, you know that that was a defining moment because the Supreme Court ruled not even a president is above the law. So I count that as a very significant day, and I don't brag about it, but I sure did get a pleasure out of it. And I came back to Capitol Hill, and here we were at a time that the nation was in a real quandary about where are we headed, what are we doing? Now, I want to flash back, though, after that was over, and I came back and thought about my childhood. I thought about the things that have meant the most to me all my life. And there were some principles. And I tried to commit those to myself on a daily basis because, believe you me, my life has been a fall and rise. Many times over. And I've thought about those principles, and they're those foundations that we talked about. And number one is pick your friends. Don't let your friends pick you. And the friends you pick will always come to you when you're in a problem, not the other way around. They'll beat you to the problem. And I've been so extremely lucky all my life to have picked the right friends. And you've heard the old adage, if you can count friends, real friends, on more than your hands, you don't really have that kind of friends. And then the recurring theme here today has been the one that I love the most. Cindy got into it. Empathy. Now, by empathy, I do not mean that you feel good about sending $10 to the poor little orphans over in Bangladesh, although you should. Empathy is when you really, really can say, I put myself in somebody else's shoes. And even in today's terrible discourse of political life, you can actually say, you know, there might be something to what they're saying. Hard to do, I promise you. I have to pinch myself sometime and say, Rufus. Understand that they're trying to say something, and they may be wrong. You may think they're stupid, but listen to them. Because when you're talking, you are not learning anything. So empathy has played a great role in my life, of my downs and my ups. And then the third fundamental I've always lived by: don't forget to thank the people who helped you get where you are. And right now in this room today, I promise you there are people that are going to say, I really should listen to him. Because you know right now that there are people along the way that you haven't thanked recently for helping you get where you are. The man who was head of the Watergate Committee, named Senator Sam Ervin, taught me this wonderful, wonderful piece of life. He said, Rufus, I don't have time for my old friends, and I'm not going to rush out and meet new friends until I can take care of my old friends. So thank the people who've helped you do what you need to do in life. And then the fourth principle is watch out for that terrible thing called hubris. Now, we all have egos. You have to have a little ego to have done something significant in life. But hubris gets worse. You know, it's the Greek word that says you're beyond yourself. You think that you are so absolutely wonderful that you are full of pride. An old boy in the country one time described it. He said, I don't know what that word means, but I can tell you what it really means. He said, it's like a guy that gets a drink. He goes to the bar. He says, drinks on the house of everybody. He can't even pay his rent. And the second stage of whatever that word you said it was, Rufus, is that he thinks that he's the most beautiful guy in the world. He stands around preening, looking in the mirror saying, ain't I great? I'm pretty. He said, though the most dangerous and the most incredibly killing one, you think you're invisible. And how many times do we see people, not only in politics, in church life, in business life, hubris takes them over. And then the other enduring principle that I want to talk a little bit about today in this short amount of time for a recovering politician is spirituality. I'm not talking about any particular brand of religion. Yours might be something. Mine's a lot of working in the garden, taking walks in the garden. You need some sort of spirituality. Now, let's go back a little bit. I was born on a farm in Boone. There were 4 brothers, 1 sister. My father was a wildlife protector. And most of this stuff I got on myself through osmosis from my mother and father. But some of it you have to sort of work at every single day. I did all the high school things you can do. You know, I was even the class president, student body president, and believe it or not, you're not going to believe this. I was a state champion wrestler at weight 154. And my little niece, Lucy, said, my gosh, Uncle Rufus, haven't you gained some weight? Well, that is true, though. Go back and check it. So I was set on being a veterinarian. I wanted to work with animals because I'd grown up on the farm loving to work with all kinds of living creatures like the ones we have on here. And faith, though, came into play. Faith is so much a part of your life. Each of you got here today, and fate didn't take you into some horrible accident. Think of that. Most of you met the people that you met or you married or you want to marry through fate. So my whole idea is, how do you handle fate? What are your principles in handling fate? And those are the ones I've used. I went I got a letter in the mail one time to go down and try out for the Moorhead Scholarship at Chapel Hill. Well, I got down there, and you know what happens to you when you get to Chapel Hill. You can get in bad trouble over there. But I decided I liked that place over there, and I'd always wanted to be a politician of some sort because I admired Senator Sam Ervin, the chairman of the Watergate Committee, even back in those days. And I decided to stay, although I didn't get the scholarship. It was a failure, and I felt real bad about it, but I always was brought up to think, my goodness, look for the good part. And the good part is that they gave me a $200 a semester scholarship to go to Carolina. And I went to Carolina. And then fate again struck. After that was over, I decided I wanted to go work in Washington. I went up there without any notion of ever getting the job. But I wrote Senator Ervin a letter, and I said, I'd like to work with you someday, Senator. I liked all that stuff of Washington, the thrill of it. And you know what? I had taught the third grade for a year in a Catholic boys' school, and here I was, a shallow water Baptist from Boone, and I taught the third grade and got a call from Catholic, he'll come over and interview with us. And then there's a lot of history after that. I finished law school at night, 5 nights a week, 4 seasons a year, cruel and unusual punishment, and I vowed that someday somebody would pay for that, and the taxpayers did for 28 years. And when I graduated law school, he made me, as Sarah said, the chief counsel and staff director at 28 years old of the Senate Subcommittee on Separation of Powers. Nobody should have a job like that at that age. And then a thing called Watergate occurred, where there was a slight article one time, and President Nixon said, well, that was just a third-rate burglary. And look what happened to Watergate. Watergate crescendoed into the nation's most dynamic domestic crisis ever. We didn't know what was going to do when Nixon left office. He might have decided to arm forces and take over the country. But anyway, I got back home, and of course, I used Watergate. I ran for Attorney General. I loved that job because I was able to help people. My training in empathy came through because I thought, okay, the big shots, they can hire all the fancy people they want to, all the fine lawyers. I tried to look out for the little person, and that's where my wonderful empathy came into play because of what I had been taught at home all those years. And then I ran for governor. Didn't work that year. That's okay. One of my friends, going back to my friends, said I was walking around holding my head down, feeling sorry for myself. And he said, stop it, Rufus. How many people are there in North Carolina? I said, close to 8 million. He said, how many people got the nomination for governor? I said, well, only 2 of us. He said, okay, cut it out. Cut it out. You did something that so many other people didn't do. My attitude changed because my friends were willing to tell me what I needed to be told. Now, folks are getting into something here now. I worked hard, and the fate hit again. Fate struck again. The man who had been Secretary of State longer than I had lived, he had been Secretary of State for 52 years, Mr. Thad Ewer, and I ran for Secretary of State. I was 42 years old after having been Attorney General, and I won. And let me tell you what pains me very much today to be talking to you about. Toward the end of that 2-year term, I did a lot of things that I'm ashamed of. I'm not talking about it till today because if you've done some things like that, you were told, try to let it go, don't bring it up. Well, I'm ashamed. I got full of hubris. I had forgotten all the things I'd been taught, all that I'd seen Richard Nixon and his people do. I fell into it. I started doing things that were so hubris-ridden that it got to be funny. The newspapers got after me. The TVs got after me. It got so bad that, frankly, I left office in disgrace. Total disgrace. I've never felt as low in my life. I was afraid to come out of the house. My dear wife who's in this audience today, she said, you're not staying in this house. She said, you're getting out of here, and you're going to go to work Monday morning. I did. And because of my friends, within 2 weeks, I had clients. And I was having a hard time holding my head up. And another friend said, look, hold your head up high. You can get over this if you try and you use the principles you have told us about so many times in your speeches. Well, I was under investigation for 8 months. Under investigation by the FBI, which had been under my charge. I would have nightmares about going to jail. It was a terrible time. But then again, I reverted back to the empathy that people gave me. And I thought, man, you're getting along just fine here now. And I put a law practice together. I again, back was helping people because I thought that was my mission, as we've talked about today. And lo and behold, you won't believe it, another thing happened. Along about 10 years ago, I came into my office, I felt so bad. I said, did I have too much to drink last night? And that wouldn't have been unusual for me. I climbed the stairs and I fell like a sack of flour. I got down to my little doctor. I called him the gorilla doctor because he had an office in an old converted service station. He said, step up on the stool. I stepped up and I collapsed again. I said, Doc, what's wrong? He said, you have Guillain-Barré syndrome. I said, is that bad? He said, yes, it can be very bad. We have to get you to the hospital immediately. That was the longest ride over to Rex Hospital. Spent a week there, and I was totally paralyzed, could not lift a finger, could not talk, because Guillain-Barré syndrome lets the cells eat one another. And you don't know whether you're going to get better or not. But here's my part of how life could be gracious and wonderful. I got over to Wake Med and had all these doctors, had 5 of them. Folks, I cannot remember their name to save my life, but you know who I remember? I remember Deborah. Deborah was the one they called a medical tech. You know what she did? She wiped my rear. Frankly, yes. The people that help you, that we forget about, that make the minimum wages. And you talk about empathy. She had empathy for me. She did not know that I'd been the big shot, that I'd done all those things. And she, at times, would softly hum, Amazing Grace. And I would cry like a baby. So I survived because of those wonderful things that I told you about. Having friends, showing empathy, never forgetting to thank your people, and also having a spirit of religiosity, as I mentioned to you a while ago. When I was lying there on that bed thinking I would never walk again, you think the worst. Every day, my secretary Cheryl and my dear wife would come in with a brown paper sack, and there'd be letters, cards from people in North Carolina. And I'd sort of forgotten the roots of my upbringing in the Three Forks Baptist Church. And they said, we're praying for you. We formed prayer groups. I didn't laugh about that because I loved it. And my heart was pounding because they were so gracious to want to help me. And that healed me. That helped me heal. I'm back. I am still going full throttle, and I want to just say to you that if you ever think that you don't have something to offer, then sometime do like I did 2 nights ago, have dinner with a young lady who we chose in a foundation I have called Super Kids, who was in the worst shape you can think of. She had never had anything. She's now in the Carolina Med School. And I sat there with her and had a fine meal, and my heart was so full of admiration and grace. And I almost want to sing Amazing Grace right now. Well, why not? Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. Do something great. Thank you.